Super Mario Glitchy 4, or SMG4, is a YouTube channel that's perfected its craft in making Mario 64 bloopers. On the surface, it may seem like his videos have no substance, but there's a hint of brilliance that takes his videos from random XD to humorous exaggeration. This has become especially apparent in recent years. After hitting a rough patch, SMG4 eventually took the criticism that had been coming his way and applied it. Videos were given more polish without relying on Gmod animation or overused voice clips. New characters were introduced to the main cast, such as Fishy Boopkins, a childish anime-loving Spike, Psycho, an attention hunter brought to life from within a video game, and Bob, a self-serving rapper wannabe. There's one character in particular, though, who ended up being much more interesting than she seemed at first glance. Meggy Spletzer. Meggy was introduced in the video titled If Mario Was in Splatoon, which portrays her as an upcoming star destined to win the Splatfest. She was determined to train her team to be the best, even when she was upset with them. In fact, her frustration with Mario ironically motivated him to start pulling his own weight. The two became good friends after their first Splatfest together, and Meggy remains one of Mario's best friends to this day. After her introduction, Meggy became fairly popular, to the point where some would say her fanbase was toxic. Her next appearance was Mario's Challenge, which brought back many seemingly forgotten characters from the SMG4 universe. With consecutive appearances, she began to seem like an unbeatable athlete. However, this is where the criticism began to arise. Some saw her as a very one-dimensional character, since her only perceivable flaws were those inherent to Inklings. With Meggy's eventual promotion to main character status, however, SMG4 took this feedback and applied it once again. Meggy became a more fleshed-out character, with flaws such as her being trigger-happy, her inability to cook, and her growing fixation on winning a Splatfest. These flaws, in turn, made Meggy more entertaining to watch, because she also had personal challenges to overcome, not just athletic challenges which she could easily moonwalk her way through. Coincidentally, characters with personal challenges became much more important in July of 2018, when SMG4 started making story arcs. E3 of 2018 had just gone by, and we'd received more details on the upcoming Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. One of these details was the return of Waluigi's assist trophy, meaning that Waluigi would go unplayable for his third consecutive Smash appearance. While the controversy that followed is its own can of worms, suffice it to say that people were not happy with this decision. After all, Waluigi's constant rejection went far beyond Smash. SMG4 saw this opportunity and made it into their first story arc, the Waluigi arc. Waluigi's rejection became his source of power, and he used it to turn everyone he could into Tipo zombies. Meanwhile, Wario realizes how much he himself rejected Waluigi and seeks to make it up to him. This arc was completed in the War of the Fat Italians 2018. War of the Fat Italians is a yearly competition between Mario and SMG4 which uses different challenges taken from the comment section, finishing with a rap battle, to decide a winner. And in 2018, it was hosted by Waluigi himself. Instead of the rap battle being between Mario and SMG4, however, it became the final battle between Waluigi and everyone else who had been rescued from being zombies. The battle ends prematurely when Wario shows up and admits that he still loves Waluigi as a brother. The two finally reconcile and Waluigi becomes a better person for it. This arc was well written and highly praised. While it can be argued that it all started because of a dying meme, the shift to a more serious tone was greatly appreciated. SMG4 got right to making another story arc, but this time it would be used to redeem one of their more controversial characters, Bob. Bob is known for two things, being a jerk and being a rapper. Both of these traits were fully realized in the Rapper Bob arc. Bob devises a plot to boost his own popularity by manipulating what few friends he had. However, the worst of Bob's offenses would finally be his downfall in Mario and the Diss Track. Bob's ultimate diss track consists of tearing down his friends to build himself up even more, and make sure the whole world knows his name. Naturally, his friends are all offended, and led by Psycho, they write a song that beats him at his own game. Bob's popularity disappears almost instantly, causing him to realize that he'd betrayed the only people who ever cared about him. In The Most Important Thing, he tries to make amends with his old friends by using the last of his money to build them a gold statue. He isn't forgiven. Bob falls into a depression until he's confronted by none other than Waluigi. Waluigi asks Bob what is most important to him. Bob isn't able to admit that having friends is the most important thing to him until Waluigi scares him into admitting the truth. Bob goes to the mall to rap for what's left of his small fan base, and he quits his rapping career soon after. He goes back to his old home, a garbage dump, where he is met by his old friends. They not only forgive him, but exchange gifts as well, completing the second story arc. The Rapper Bob arc was also praised, especially for redeeming one of the most unlikable characters in SMG4 canon. However, the next story arc was not as close to the last, in time or in writing. The anime arc, as stated by the creators, is closer to being 2 story arcs in one. For this reason, I've decided to tell it like 2 story arcs. Episodes 1 through 4, 6, and 7 are the anime ban arc, and episodes 5 and 8 through 12 are the anime island arc. There are some overlapping scenes within the arcs, but they're mostly distinct stories. The anime ban arc begins when Mario, Bob, and Fishy Boopkins compete to see who is the most anime. However, during the final battle, Bob fires a Kamehameha and hits Princess Peach's castle. Peach deems anime too dangerous for the kingdom and bans it entirely with the help of the anime secret service. Even anime-like characters such as Psycho are banned from the kingdom. When her friends take her back to Japan, they meet Axel, a manga artist who uses his Inkweaver to bring anime characters to life. With the help of him and the anime cartel, led by Francis, they're able to convince Princess Peach to lift the ban. The anime island arc is a bit heavier on the story side, and it requires me to go into more detail since it's the source of this entire rant. It takes small story pieces from the previous arc and uses them in a brand new setting. Meggy has been intensely focused on the upcoming Splatfest, and she's been training non-stop to win it. Due to a run-in with the anime cartel, Mario is forced to make back tons of money. Meggy finds Mario running a lemonade stand with Tari, and she takes them both to help her train. She also recruits Luigi in between episodes. When they get to the training grounds, they're unable to effectively use Meggy's training techniques, and Meggy becomes more and more frustrated with them. Eventually, her frustration overtakes her, and she lashes out at them, claiming they're not trying hard enough. Then she stops, feeling guilty, and walks away. Mario follows her to a rooftop, where he tries to find out what's wrong with Meggy. Meggy explains that she feels like a disappointment. Despite calling herself an upcoming star, she hasn't won a single Splatfest, and her desire to win has only gotten stronger and stronger. Mario tries to cheer her up, telling her that he has no expectations of her. But what pushes Meggy to tears is the fact that her desire to win had brought her to the point of tension with her own friends. In her own words, she's losing sight of who she is. This is one of the most emotionally honest moments in SMG4's entire history, and it's beautifully executed. You can tell that Meggy isn't selfish like Bob used to be. She realizes her mistake and feels awful. Honestly, it makes sense in the context of Meggy's character development up to this point. This isn't the first time she got upset with her teammates, and even after the first time, which was tame by comparison, she still apologizes to Mario for taking Splatfest so seriously. If someone feels bad for making a mistake, only to make the same mistake again, it can feel like they'll never stop doing it. It takes reconciliation and partnership to help them out of this downward spiral of guilt. And that's exactly what Meggy is given. Meggy is forgiven by her teammates, admitting that winning Splatfest isn't worth the destruction of friendships. They decide to continue training, but this time, Meggy has made her training easier for her teammates to understand, allowing them to train effectively. Wow, you've given nothing but praise to this arc so far. Didn't you say it was the source of this rant? Thank you for asking, because this is where the anime arc starts to fall into mediocrity. The return of Desti the Octoling. Desti was originally a one-off character. In the video If Mario Was in Splatoon 2, Desti practically made herself Meggy's rival by challenging Meggy directly. Of course, this just added to how badly Meggy wanted to win the Splatfest, but eventually she drops it and ignores Desti outright. Back to the story at hand, Desti interrupts their training and steals their weapons. Mario tries to chase her down, but to no avail. They have no choice but to look for where Desti is keeping the weapons. It isn't long before they find Desti's hideout and attempt to take their weapons back. Desti was prepared for this, and she forces them out with gunfire. After Meggy calls her a cheater, she replies, and walls them out. The heroes need a new plan, and Meggy wants to fight back. While riding in their recently acquired monster truck, they run into their friends from Japan, and the two groups team up. The heroes attack Desti's hideout. Desti's teammates try to hold the fort, until Desti jumps in and starts rapid-firing grenades. Axel's Blastoise reflects one grenade back at her, clogging her weapon and causing it to explode. Before Desti is overrun, she offers up a Wild West-style duel with Meggy. If Meggy loses, she must pull out a Splatfest. And Meggy shockingly agrees. The countdown begins, and the splatter shots are at the ready. Suddenly, Meggy throws hers at Desti, knocking her down long enough to take back all of the stolen weapons. Desti is annoyed that Meggy cheated, to which Meggy replies, as she and her friends get away. Desti swears revenge, claiming she'll thrash Meggy at Splatfest. I love this battle scene. It's goofy, but it's also intense. It's especially funny to think that Meggy only accepted Desti's duel just to use Desti's words against her. Even if the punchline is predictable, it still had me grinning from ear to ear. Our heroes head back to Mario's house and regroup. Axel shows them all his Inkweaver, but explains that it's very weak without quality Inkling ink. Meggy hesitantly gives him some to help get Psycho back into the kingdom. After anime is unbanned, Meggy's team can finally prepare for the Splatfest. Everything seems to be back to normal, until the Splatfest actually arrives. Everyone is ready to fight under Meggy's leadership, except no one can find her. They're forced to find a replacement while the rest of them continue the search. However, they're matched up against Desti's team. Needless to say, Mario's team is easily defeated. Back in the locker room, the search party returns, with no success. Desti enters and offers to help them, but only so she can properly defeat Meggy. They decide to check Meggy's apartment, where they find claw marks, ink blots, and an anime DVD. Meggy's been kidnapped. Some of them believe that Axel kidnapped Meggy, while the others deny it on account of Axel's kindness to them. The former group leaves to search for Axel, but instead they find a map that shows Meggy's location, Anime Island. Those who think Axel is innocent recruit former Anime Secret Service guards to help find the real culprit. The groups get back together, and they set out for Anime Island. Just before they leave, however, Godzilla appears and captures Desti. The rest of them press on, sailing and fighting their way to Anime Island. We see Meggy taken from a cell to a hallway. She sees that Axel has been kidnapped as well. Francis is the true kidnapper, and he plans to get the Inkweaver to 100% of its power and fill Anime Island with waifus. He captured many Inklings, slowly draining them of their ink. However, he wants to use Meggy to test his new machine, the Inksucker 2000. Just before he drops her in, the goons show up with Desti. While she and Meggy break free for a little while, and free Axel in the process, they're eventually stopped. Francis takes them both back to the Inksucker 2000, and he drops Meggy in. The Inksucker is shown to cause horrific pain to Meggy, yet when Francis is informed of the intruders, he turns up the machine to full power without a second thought. Francis confronts Meggy's friends and summons Sephiroth to fight them. Inspired by Desti, Axel tricks Mewtwo into destroying the machine's power source. Axel and Desti are both freed, and Meggy is safe, for now. Desti and Axel are about to help Meggy when the battling echoes into earshot. Meggy puts her friends first, sacrificing all but guaranteed freedom to keep them safe. With a simple distraction, the heroes get an opening and destroy Sephiroth. Everyone is excited. It seems like they're set to win the day. But then everything stops. Francis had summoned Sephiroth again, who stabbed Desti right through the back. With her dying breath, she looks at Meggy and says, she drops dead, leaving us with nothing but a silent outro. No matter how attached you were to Desti, this has to be one of the most chilling story moments in YouTube history. It's rare to see a character's death treated with such solemnity. There's no music and very few voice clips, but it's a devastating punch to the gut. It's almost gruesome to see such a demented villain like Francis. All of his likability is stripped away in this one moment. It's clear. There's no forgiveness, no second chance, and no remorse. Francis must be stopped. Without a moment to spare, Francis summons an army of Sephiroths to destroy Meggy's friends for good. They're surrounded, until Bob and the guards show up in a giant tank and destroy them all while singing What Is Love in their robotic voices. Francis tries to summon another army, but the Inkweaver is empty. He retreats, only to be stopped and subjected to a rather elaborate team combo, and blasted into the storage tank. The remaining ink spills into the Inkweaver and charges it up to full power. He uses the ink to summon Super Saiyan God? Cool. This is where the heroes make their final stand. Most of them try to take on Goku, obviously with no success. But Axel sneaks around and dives straight into Francis, taking back the Inkweaver. He only needs to summon a more powerful being. But there's no more ink. Meggy tells Axel to start the machine again. She knows she'll die, but understands that everyone would die if she didn't. Axel doesn't want to do it, not after all this effort, but he has no choice. He fixes the machine and starts it back up. We don't even get to know if the machine is at full power or worse. Trying to stop them, Goku shoots at the machine, and it explodes with Meggy inside. Mario runs straight to the rubble and starts digging, hoping just to see her alive. Axel takes the ink. Being the Inkweaver's true master, he is able to summon Shaggy to fight Goku. Of course, Goku stands no chance against Shaggy, and the entire bunker starts to crumble. Goku self-destructs in the final attempt to complete his mission. Shaggy comes back and saves SMG4 and friends, putting them back on the boat. Then he saves all the captured Inklings. Mario realizes that Meggy isn't there, and Shaggy is able to save her just before the whole island explodes. When he comes back with Meggy, everyone is shocked. She's alive, sure, but she looks different. She's been turned into a human. The final scene of the anime arc is quite the bittersweet ending. The heroes hold a funeral for Desti, with Human Meggy placing Desti's blaster onto her coffin. She gets ready to push it off to sea, but she stops. She says Desti's death was her fault, and she truly doesn't know what to do. Not with the coffin, but with herself. Desti is dead, and Human Meggy is, well, a human. Meggy's been knocked down so far after everything Francis has done. But in the very words of Desti herself, she has to get back up. She can't let this keep her from going on. Her friends tell her that, no matter what, they'll be there to pick her up when she's down. With a reassuring look in her eyes, Human Meggy pushes the coffin. She and her friends line up, and the funeral is finished with a 21-gun salute. Human Meggy looks on, promising to avenge Desti's death. She will win Splatfest for her. This arc was mediocre at best. Sure, a few scenes managed to stick out, but other than those scenes, what more is there to say? The Anime Ban arc is a weak story with the sole purpose of setting up the Anime Island arc. The Anime Island arc has its own problems. The fight scenes are only there to progress the plot, and the early scenes of Meggy's imprisonment move very slowly. Another big flaw of the anime arc is that no one learns anything in the end. While the previous two arcs resulted in their main characters becoming better people, the anime arc had no such improvement. The closest thing we get is when Meggy's friends remind her to persevere at the end of the funeral scene. But that isn't a lesson that Meggy had to learn. Desti herself said that Meggy was already very persistent. This echo of Desti's words is not meant to be a lesson, but rather a means of comfort. Therefore, no characters learned anything from this arc. A third flaw in the anime arc is the punishment of its antagonist. While I personally enjoyed Francis's role as a villain, his comeuppance is severely lacking in its payoff. With such a despicable villain, you'd think his death would be a bit more gruesome, but simply leaving him to die was considered enough? He murdered someone permanently. We should have gotten to see his slow and painful death. but all we got were random voice clips and no death, as if it were being played for laughs. You showed us Meggy's painful torture, but you couldn't show us Francis's gruesome death? Easily the worst part of the anime arc was its plot twists. Desti's death and Meggy's transformation. Desti's introduction was her only video outside of this arc, and it takes more time than that to develop a character, especially if you decide to kill them off and make a big deal out of it. Yes, a character's permanent death should be taken seriously, but of all the characters to be so worried to lose, Desti really wasn't it. In fact, why did they kill off Desti? She and Meggy had an entertaining rivalry dynamic, and she never really became friends with Meggy. Desti's claim that she only wanted to rescue Meggy to humiliate her holds true throughout the rescue. Why not get rid of Psycho instead? She's one of Meggy's best friends, and she's had plenty of screen time, but she hasn't really done anything big for SMG4 as a series other than Darkest Hour. Had Desti survived, she could have remained an entertaining villain in a series which heavily lacks them. She could have teamed up with SMG3 in the Splatfest, calling back Tomorrow's refusal to join her team before. She could have been the final obstacle in Meggy's road to winning a Splatfest. She could have continued being important without becoming emotional bait. Instead, she's dead, ironically accomplishing her goal of humiliating Meggy by dropping her down an emotional well of tears. Meggy's transformation was just a second plot twist for the sake of having plot twists. You may have noticed that I've mostly been referring to Human Meggy as if she and Meggy were completely separate characters. And really, that's not too far from the truth. Meggy transforms not only in species but also in character, and neither one makes sense. First of all, since when could Inklings become humans? At no point in the story is it mentioned that Inklings, when drained of all their ink, will become humans. Every moment that brings up the extraction of ink hints at death, not transformation. We even see Meggy's skin start to crack. It'd be one thing if nothing was said and we were left to wonder what could happen on our own. But we're told Meggy will die several times, so we're led to believe that's what will happen. This is a common complaint about the movie Frozen. Hans is revealed to be a villain late in the movie, but there are no plot details before that point that would imply he was a villain. We're led to believe for the whole movie that Hans truly loves Anna, to the point where he shares a romantic duet with her. These contradictory details cheapen the plot twist and ruin Hans as a character. Why compare a YouTube series with a Disney movie? Because of this.
We really want to explore and push ourselves in terms of writing, in terms of the sort of stories we can tell.
Soap opera moment!
Another problem with her transformation is that it's never explained in universe. Not even hand-waved. Right after it's revealed, they just move on to the funeral. Human Meggy's Gmod workshop page, not a video, her Gmod workshop page, states that Meggy had all the ink removed from her body. But if that's the case, why didn't she die? Surely there's at least a little bit of ink left. Is there a way to change her back? As for her character, even if Desti and Meggy were starting to bond over the last few episodes, it's quite a stretch to say they'd become great friends already. Yet Meggy treats Desti's death like it's the most heartbreaking loss that she could have ever experienced, to the point that she practically has PTSD now. Why would we have any reason to believe that Meggy and Desti were so closely attached within so few episodes that Meggy would be so distraught over Desti's death? The biggest mistake in these changes to Meggy was making them at the same time. Either change on its own would have worked much better. If they only made Meggy a human without being so unreasonably attached to Desti, the worst of the two options mind you, then they'd probably have made a better effort to explain her transformation. And then Human Meggy could at least focus on learning how to be a human. Or if Meggy was overly distraught about Desti's death, having her stay an Inkling would remind us that she's still Meggy, she's just going through a tough loss. In fact, making neither of these changes works just as well. After all, Desti's death was enough of a plot twist on its own. So instead of Meggy becoming a PTSD-riddled human, let's try a more believable approach. Go back to the scene where we see Meggy's skin cracking. Well, since their bodies are made of ink canonically, the very same reason she was turned into a human, it'd be very easy to explain that her skin is brittle from having very little ink left. However, the machine's premature destruction leaves just enough ink for Meggy to survive. Fast forward to when Shaggy saves everyone, and he comes back with Meggy in his arms. He lays her down onto the boat, unconscious. However, Tari confirms that Meggy's alive, and everyone else is relieved. Since Inkling ink slowly regenerates over time, Meggy will return back to normal, but she needs to rest for a while. They take her back to her apartment, cleaning it up from her kidnapping. They lay her on the sofa and wait. Meggy wakes up and sees her friends surrounding her.
Oh yeah. Hey, that's pretty good.
With a smile on her face, Meggy begins to tear up. Her sacrifice had been worth it. Her friends are all alive, and she is too. They cared just as much for her as she did for them.
Nice! 何やってるのよ、だらしない。
Transition into the funeral scene, where Meggy is still an Inkling. No other tweaks are needed. She can still be sad about Desti's death in this scene. It's a funeral after all. But Meggy at least stays grounded in who she really is. She gets back up and stays up. That's what I'd do with Final Hours, but there's more. If Meggy never transformed, how would that affect Meggy's future appearances? Well, since the arc, Human Meggy only made 3 appearances that actually depend on who she has become. First, we have Mario Does the Chores. After my proposed scene above, Meggy may need help mopping on account of her still being somewhat weak from the events of the arc. If the cracks in her face are still there at this point, then they would at least need to be subdued to emphasize her recovery. She is also discouraged from being unable to train due to this weakness. Mario could encourage Meggy in a similar fashion to the original, using the splatter shots to help her clean the floor and train for Splatfest. She gets extremely eager to start training again, ending in a similar fashion to the scene proper. Her second noteworthy appearance was There's Something Up with Meggy, where she dealt with her emotions. Obviously, this video isn't necessary if we're going by the idea that Meggy isn't an emotional mess over Desti's death. Third, the beginning of the Minecraft plague shows Meggy being able to swim, one of the only benefits to her being human. But other than that, she's mostly the same. Realistically, this scene has no purpose other than to emphasize her humanity by making a distinction from her Inkling days, which makes sense to do. But obviously it wouldn't be there if Meggy was in this video instead. All of Human Meggy's other appearances are either secondary or uninteresting. While I don't think she's the only interesting character on this channel, I have to wonder, why is Meggy's transformation so underplayed? They said themselves that they want to explore the idea of Meggy dealing with this. So far though, she doesn't really seem to struggle with it at all. After There's Something Up with Meggy, she seems to have dealt with her emotions already, and she seems very capable of using her new human body. Just a month after her transformation, Human Meggy can already build a treehouse, use her roller, and play volleyball as if she never even changed species. However, these could be excused as things she'd done before as an Inkling, and therefore would easily pick up on again. But how does she already know how to swim like a human? She's never been able to before. Was she taught in between videos? Because we still haven't gotten a video focused on her learning her human body. We've only seen her fail to use it in one video. This character has undergone a huge change. Do something with it. Meggy's being human left us with so many questions. Why didn't she die from losing all of her ink? Are any of the other Inklings more human-like? Even if her transformation made sense, why are none of the characters trying to turn Meggy back into an Inkling? Have they already tried? Have they determined that it's impossible before they even made an effort? Do they not care? Does Human Meggy even care? I care, because part of Meggy's uniqueness was in her being an Inkling. Now, she's just another human girl. I'm not trying to act like this is the first time that SMG4 made a decision that someone is disliked. Not everyone likes that Meggy even exists. Maybe someone was mad that War of the Fat Italians 2018 was taken over by the Waluigi arc. There are definitely people upset about losing some older SMG4 characters. Not everything has to go my way on someone else's YouTube channel, but the introduction of Human Meggy without any build-up or in-universe explanation is a huge mistake. As much as I want Inkling Meggy back though, I don't want the writers to focus on that so hard that they forget to properly develop the character. They should take their time and think of a way to change her back that actually makes sense and has a proper explanation. Two wrongs don't make a right after all. And the way it looks right now, there's nowhere to go but up. In conclusion, the anime arc as a whole didn't really accomplish much. The anime ban arc was only notable for introducing Axel. The anime island arc did make for an intense narrative, but it was ultimately a build-up to the poorly contrived plot twist that retroactively made the whole arc worse. Desti's death seemed forced into the narrative in an attempt to justify Meggy's trauma. Meggy's transformation logically should not have happened, and her sadness over Desti's death has made Meggy an excuse to create false emotional tension. While the concepts introduced in these plot twists may work for other stories with different characters, they certainly don't work with SMG4's story or characters, at least not the way it's presented. Thus, these plot twists will forever leave a stain on the record of an already faltering YouTube channel. Desti has become wasted potential, Meggy has become wasted screen time, and an Inkling, somehow, has become a human.